from the etheric principle and from your surroundings into your body. In accordance with one's own aptitude, every individual will perceive the penetration of vital energy through the pores differently. Once you have gained, through repetitive exercises, the experience of breathing through the lungs and the entire body at the same time, then combine both methods of breathing for your wish inhalation, whether it be for health, success, peace, control of your passions, that depends on what you require the most. The fulfillment of your wish, which must be given in the present tense and in the form of an order, is not only accepted by your lungs and bloodstream but also by your entire body. Once you have achieved a certain proficiency with this exercise, you can then also influence the exhalation magically. Every time you exhale, you can imagine that you eliminate the opposite of your wish, such as weakness, failure, restlessness, or anxiety, etc. Once you have succeeded at inhaling and exhaling with your lungs and with your whole body, then this exercise has been completed. The next exercise deals with the control of the body. It is an art to sit quietly and comfortably, and it must be learned. Sit on a chair in such a position that the spine remains completely straight. In the beginning, the backrest of the chair may be used for support. While sitting on the chair, the feet should be firmly on the ground and should touch, as should the knees. The legs should also form a right angle, 90 degrees, at the knees. Lightly rest your hands on your legs close to the knees, right hand on the right knee, left hand on the left knee. Then try to sit without any back support, free of everything, free of tension, without any strain on your muscles, but remembering to sit erect. Set an alarm clock for 5 minutes and begin the exercise. Now close your eyes and, while in this position, pay close attention to what is occurring in your body. In the beginning, you will notice how the muscles are disquieted or irritated by nervous impulses. Muster all your energy to overcome this feeling and force yourself to remain quietly in this position. As simple as this exercise appears to be, it is difficult for the beginner. Should you experience any difficulties in holding your knees and feet together, you can bind them together with a towel or a cord. Should you succeed in sitting in this position for 5 minutes without any effort and without interruption, extend the exercise time by 1 minute per exercise until you are able to remain in this position for at least 30 minutes, provided you are totally comfortable, that there are no interruptions, and that you are completely at peace. Once you have achieved this, the exercise is complete. When you have reached this point in your exercises, you will notice that no other position will afford you as much rest and recuperation as this one. Should you wish to use this body posture exercise as a means to achieve your purpose, as for instance for the development of your willpower, you can do this provided you completely master the above-mentioned body posture for 1 full hour. In other words, you have to be able to sit quietly and comfortably, without anything disturbing you, for 1 hour. You can also select various other positions at your own discretion. The Hindu yoga teachings recommend and describe various positions called asanas. They also offer the prospect that you will gain various occult powers if you master these positions. Whether or not powers are actually released through these asanas remains to be seen. For our own magical development, we require a certain body posture, asana. It does not really matter which one we select, the one described being the simplest one. This posture serves to calm the body and to increase the willpower. Above all, the spirit and the soul require a physical body whose workings are undisturbed. This will be discussed in further detail in the relevant exercises. Any student who, as the result of the exercises of the first and second step, becomes very tired mentally and psychically, astrally, and consequently falls asleep regularly during the concentration and meditation exercises, would be well advised to do his exercises in the aforementioned body posture or asana position. The student should also strive to practice the control of his physical body in everyday life. By being observant and attentive, he will be given many opportunities to practice this control. For instance, should you be tired, force yourself to do some little chore or go for a walk. Should you be hungry, postpone your meal by 30 minutes. Should you be thirsty, do not drink right away, but wait a while. Should you be in the habit of doing everything in haste, force yourself to do it at a slower pace. On the other hand, if you are a slowpoke, practice doing your chores faster. It is left to the student's discretion to coerce and to control his body and nerves through his willpower. This completes the exercises of the second step. Summary of the exercises in Step 2: Magical schooling of the spirit. 1. Autosuggestion or unveiling the puzzle of the subconscious. 2. Concentration exercises: A. Visual, optical, B. Acoustic or auditory, C. Sentience or feeling, D. Olfactory, and E. Taste. Exercises concerned with the avoidance of thoughts, vacancy of mind, have to be continued and must be deepened. 2. Magical schooling of the soul. 1. Astral or magical equilibrium regarding the elements, transformation or ennobling of the character, A. By battling negative qualities or controlling them, B. By autosuggestion, and C. By transmutation or transformation into the opposite attribute or characteristic. 3. Magical schooling of the physical body. A. Conscious pore breathing, B. Conscious body posture, and C. Body control in everyday life at one's discretion. Before falling asleep, only the most beautiful and pure thoughts should be entertained and taken along into sleep. End of Step 2. Introduction. Knowledge, courage, volition, and silence are the four pillars of the foundation upon which rests Solomon's temple, the microcosm and the macrocosm upon which the sacred science of magic is built. Every magician must have these fundamental attributes, which are in accordance with the four elements, if he wishes to attain the highest, the ultimate, in this sacred science. Magical knowledge can be acquired by anyone through diligent study. The cognizance of the laws allows and enables such a person to gradually attain the highest wisdom. Volition is the aspect of the will which can be attained through tenacity, patience, and perseverance, namely by practice in the holy sciences. Those who wish not only to satisfy their curiosity but who are serious and sincere about entering and ascending the path to the loftiest heights must muster an inexorable will. Courage: whosoever does not shun obstacles or sacrifices and does not pay any attention to other people's opinions, who remains unperturbed, will always continue on his path with his goal in mind, regardless of whether he meets with success or failure. To such a person the highest will reveal itself. Silence: whosoever praises and boasts about himself and parades his wisdom can never become a true magician. It is not necessary for a magician to be considered an authority, on the contrary, he will do everything in his power not to be recognized as such. Silence is might. The more you keep silent about your experiences and knowledge without separating yourself from humanity, the more you will receive a fountain of knowledge from this source. Therefore, if it is important for you to acquire knowledge and wisdom, you must do everything in your power to acquire the aforementioned four fundamental attributes. Without these you will not be able to achieve anything of importance in sacred magic. Now we will begin with the exercises of the third step. Magical schooling of the spirit. In Step 2 we learned how to practice the concentration of the senses. We schooled every individual sense through concentration exercises. In this third step we will expand our concentration, not only by concentrating on one sense, but 2 or 3 senses at once. I will cite a few examples from which the competent student will be able to develop and expand his own field of operation. Imagine a clock with a moving pendulum on the wall. Your imagination must be so complete that it is as if the clock were actually on the wall. At the same time, attempt to perceive the ticking of the clock with your sense of hearing. Try to maintain this twofold imagination of sight and sound for 5 minutes. Again, in the beginning you may succeed for only a few seconds, but through frequent repetition you will be able to improve upon it and maintain the required length of time. Practice makes perfect. Repeat this exercise with a similar object such as a gong, where you not only hear the pealing of the gong but also see the person striking the gong. Try to visualize a brook and hear the murmur of the water, or visualize a wheat field swaying in the light wind and at the same time listen to the rustling of the wind. For a change, you can also implement your own experiments that require 2 or even 3 other senses, for example sight and sentience, sense of touch. All senses must be stimulated and concentratively developed. Particular importance must be placed upon the senses of sight, hearing, and feeling, which, in the science of magic, are of the utmost importance for any further progress. I cannot reiterate often enough the significance of these exercises for the progress of the student upon his entire magical path. Therefore, practice diligently every day. Once you are capable of maintaining 2 or 3 sense concentrations simultaneously for at least 5 minutes, then this exercise is complete. Should you experience any tiredness during the concentration exercises, terminate them immediately and postpone them to a more favorable time when you are mentally more alert. Beware of falling asleep during your exercises. We know from experience that the most favorable time for these concentration exercises is the early morning hours. Once you have reached a certain level of concentration as far as the preceding is concerned and you are capable of employing 2 or 3 senses for 5 minutes simultaneously, then you can continue on to the next exercise. Again, choose a comfortable position as you do with every concentration exercise. Close your eyes and visualize as plastically as you can an area which is well known to you, a village, particular place, house, garden, meadow, heath, or forest. Maintain this visualization. Make certain that every detail such as color, light, and form is maintained. What you visualize or imagine must be so real that it is as if you were personally present at that particular place. Nothing but nothing should escape your attention, and nothing should be overlooked or left out. Should you lose the image or picture, or if it becomes blurry, immediately recall the image anew, but much clearer than before. This exercise is complete when you can maintain this picture in your imagination for at least 5 minutes. Then make the attempt to add the acoustic concentration to these scenes. Should you have visualized a beautiful forest, then listen at the same time to the singing of the birds, the murmur of water in the little stream, the rustling of the wind, the buzzing of the bees, etc. If you are successful with this imagery, choose a similar scenario, but this time something which you select yourself. All the above exercises are to be practiced with your eyes closed. These exercises are complete if you have successfully imagined every region, every place, or village, and you have employed 2 or 3 senses simultaneously for the duration of at least 5 minutes. Once you have reached this level of concentration, then you have to achieve the same level of competence with the same exercises but with open eyes. This is accomplished by fixing your eyes on one point or by staring into empty space or into total nothingness. While practicing this exercise, your actual physical surroundings must cease to exist for you. And the picture you have chosen must come into being before your eyes like a fata morgana suspended in the air. When you have succeeded in maintaining one picture for at least 5 minutes, then select another. This exercise is complete when you can call forth any picture you desire with your eyes open and maintain it for 5 minutes with one or more senses. All future concentration exercises should be practiced in exactly the same manner, just like, after reading a novel, you let the pictures of the events that were described pass by you in your mind's eye. We have learned how to imagine places and localities we have seen and know. The next step is to imagine places, villages, and cities we have never seen. In the beginning we imagine these places with our eyes closed, and once we are successful with 2 or 3 senses simultaneously for 5 minutes, we then practice the same concentration exercise with our eyes open. This exercise is complete when we succeed in maintaining this imagery with open eyes and with 2 or 3 senses simultaneously for at least 5 minutes. From motionless objects such as places, villages, towns, cities, houses, and forests, we move on to living creatures such as dogs, cats, birds, horses, cows, calves, chickens, and imagine them in exactly the same manner as all the other objects that were the subject of our concentration exercises. First, 5 minutes with our eyes closed and then 5 minutes with our eyes open. Once we accomplish that, then imagine these animals moving about, for instance, a cat cleaning herself, a cat catching a mouse or drinking milk, a dog barking and running, a bird in flight or eating, etc. The student may choose these or similar situations that is left entirely to his own discretion. This exercise is first practiced with closed eyes and then with open eyes. If you accomplish this with your eyes closed for 5 minutes and with your eyes open for 5 minutes, then this exercise is completed and you can continue on with the next exercise. In the same manner, imagine human beings, first friends, relatives, acquaintances, departed relatives and friends, and later on strangers and people you have never seen before. First imagine their facial features, such as eyes, eyebrows, nose, mouth, teeth, the shape of the face, jaws, cheeks, ears, hair, skin, and then the entire head, followed by the clothing the person wears. Always practice this exercise first with your eyes closed and then with open eyes for at least 5 minutes before you continue on to imagine human beings in motion, as for instance walking, working, speaking. If you have been successful with one sense, namely the visual, then add the acoustic, so that you can hear that person speak, imagining that you hear his voice. Make the effort to have your imagination correspond to reality, for instance the tone or pitch of the voice, speaking slowly or fast. Hear that voice in your imagination in the exact manner in which that person actually speaks, first with your eyes closed and then with your eyes open. Once you are successful with these exercises, begin imagining total strangers, people you have never seen before. Visualize various facial features and voices. They may be male or female of any age. Then visualize human beings of other races, men, women, children, young and old, Indian, African, Chinese and Japanese. Should you require any assistance in regards to visual stimulation, use books or magazines on the subject. Visits to museums are highly recommended for this purpose. Once you have achieved all this and you are able to maintain this imagery for 5 minutes with your eyes closed and with your eyes open, then the magical schooling of the spirit of the third step has been completed. It requires perseverance, patience, determination, and tenacity in order to complete these most difficult exercises. Those students who are willing to make the necessary effort will be greatly satisfied with the powers they acquire through these concentration exercises, and they can improve upon them in the next step. The concentration exercises of this step not only strengthen the willpower and the ability of concentration, but all our intellectual and mental powers. They elevate the magical abilities of the spirit and are preparatory exercises for thought transference, telepathy, mental travel, clairvoyance and many other things. Therefore these exercises are absolutely necessary. The aspiring magician will not progress without these abilities. Therefore make every effort to work meticulously and conscientiously. Magical schooling of the soul. Before you begin with this exercise, the astral equilibrium of the elements in the soul must be established through introspection and self-control, otherwise you will cause great harm to yourself. In the course of your development you should continue to work on the ennoblement of your character, but only when you are absolutely certain that not one of the elements predominates should you begin to work with the elements in the astral body. It is the task of this step to make the fundamental attributes or characteristics of the elements one's own and to call them forth and dissolve them again at one's own discretion. We already know the theory of the effectiveness of the elements, and we are now connecting the theory to the practice in the following manner. The fire element, fire with its expansion into all directions has warmth as its specific attribute and is therefore spherical. Above all, we should acquire this attribute and call it forth in our soul and in our body at our discretion. In step 2 of magical schooling of the physical body, we chose a posture which the Hindus call an asana. When we assume this posture, it allows us to remain comfortable and undisturbed for long periods of time. From now on we will use that terminology for easier understanding and refer to it as the asana posture. The first step of this exercise is to assume the asana posture and imagine yourself to be in the center of the fire element, which, in the shape of a sphere, encompasses the entire universe. Imagine that everything around you is fiery, even the entire universe. Now begin to inhale the fire element through your nose and also inhale simultaneously with your entire body, pour breathing. Inhale. Deeply and evenly with regularity, without compressing the air or straining the lungs. The physical and astral bodies must be like empty containers into which the element is inhaled or drawn with every breath. The heat of the element must be increased with every breath and must be pressed into the body. The heat must continue to increase with every breath. The heat and also the expansive force must continue to increase, as must the fiery pressure, until eventually you feel fiery hot. The entire process of inhaling the fire element through the body is of course a purely imaginary procedure and must be practiced with the plastic visualization of the particular element. Start this exercise with 7 inhalations of the fire element, and with every successive exercise increase it by 1 inhalation. As a rule, 20 to 30 inhalations should suffice. Only those students who are physically strong and who possess a great deal of willpower should exceed that number of inhalations in accordance with their ability. Should the counting interfere with your concentration, just use the string of beads. In the beginning you will perceive the imaginary heat only astrally, in the soul. However, with every exercise the heat becomes more perceptible physically as well as astrally. This heat can increase to the degree that the temperature might elevate to the level of perspiration or even a fever. If the student has established in his soul the equilibrium of the elements in the meantime, then such an accumulation of the elements in the body will do no harm. Once you have completed the exercise of the imaginary accumulation of the fiery element, you feel the heat and the expansive force of the fire imaginatively. The next step is the elimination of the fire element. Inhale normally through the mouth, and exhale the fiery element into the whole universe through the mouth and the entire body, pour exhaling. The exhalation of the element has to occur as many times as the inhalation. In other words, when you begin this exercise by inhaling 7 times, you have to also exhale 7 times. The number of times you inhale must correspond to the number of times you exhale. This is very important, because after this exercise has been completed the student must have the feeling that not even the minutest particle of the element has remained within him. Also, the feeling of heat that was produced must dissipate completely. It is therefore advisable to make use of the string of beads when you inhale and when you exhale. In the beginning these exercises are to be practiced with closed eyes and later on with open eyes. Alexandra David Neal, the Tibetan explorer and traveler, describes in her books a similar experiment called Tumo, which was allegedly practiced by the lamas. However, this exercise is, for practical purposes and especially for Europeans, incomplete and cannot be recommended for students of magic. There are initiates in the Orient who, for years, have practiced this exercise, which in their language is called a sadhana. They have the ability to condense the fire element to such a degree that they can walk about naked and barefoot without being affected by the cold. Even if they were to be wrapped in a wet cloth, it would dry in a very short time. They affect their surroundings through the accumulation of the fire element and therewith have a direct effect on nature herself. Not only are they able to melt snow and ice which is around them within a few yards, but also at a distance of miles away. This and similar phenomena can be produced by a European as well as anyone else, provided that a person spends enough time on these exercises. However, for our own magical ascent or development it is neither important nor necessary to be in control of just one element, but we must be in control of all the elements. Because from the magical point of view it is the only proper thing to do. The air element. This exercise deals with the air element. The practice employed is the same as with the fire element, only we have to imagine a different feeling. Assume the same comfortable asana posture as aforementioned, then close your eyes and imagine that you are in the center of an air space, one which occupies the entire universe. You do not perceive anything, you are completely unaware of your surroundings, nothing exists for you other than that the space encompassing the whole universe is filled with air. Inhale the air element into the empty vessel of the soul and into the physical body through total body breathing, with your lungs and pores. Every breath adds to the amount of air and with more air you fill the whole body. You must maintain the image that with every breath your body is filled with air to such a degree that it resembles an air balloon. At the same time you must imagine that your body is getting lighter, as light as the air itself. The feeling of lightness must be so intense that eventually, because of its lightness, you no longer feel your body. Begin the exercise with the air element exactly in the same manner as you did with the fire element. Start with 7 inhalations and 7 exhalations. After the exercises have been completed, you must have the feeling that not even the minutest particle of the air element remains in the body, and you should feel exactly the same as you did when you began this exercise. So that you do not have to count your inhalations and exhalations, make use of the string of beads or knots. Increase the number of inhalations and exhalations with each exercise, but do not exceed 40. The initiate will succeed through continuous practice in achieving phenomena such as levitation, walking on water, floating in the air, transposition of the physical body, and many other things, especially when he concentrates on this one element only. True initiates, however, are not content with one-sided phenomena, since that is not the goal of a true magician. True magicians want to penetrate much deeper into cognizance and control, and they want to achieve much more. The water element: take up the usual asana posture, close your eyes and forget your entire surroundings. Imagine that the whole universe is an infinite ocean and you are positioned directly in the center. With each total body breath, your body is filled with this element. You must feel the coldness of the water in your whole body. Should your body be filled with the water element by inhaling it 7 times, you must also exhale it 7 times. When you exhale, you eliminate the water element from your body to the point that, when you exhale for the last time, not even the slightest particle remains. Again, make use of the string of beads. Remember to increase the number of inhalations and exhalations by 1 with every exercise. The more often you practice this exercise, the more distinctly you will sense the water element with its coldness attributes. You must virtually feel like a lump of ice. Each exercise should not exceed 20 minutes. In time you should be able to cause your body to become ice cold, even on the hottest summer day. Initiates in the Orient control the water element so completely that it is very easy for them to achieve great phenomena with it. They are able to produce rain during the hottest time of the year, during drought, and they can also do the opposite: they can stop the rain. They can chase away thunderstorms, calm a turbulent and raging ocean, control all the animals below the water, and so on. A true magician knows how this is accomplished and does not require any explanation. The earth element is the last element. You begin your exercise in exactly the same asana posture as with the other element exercises. Now imagine that the entire universe consists only of earth and you are sitting in its center. Do not imagine the earth to be a lump of clay, but instead imagine it to be a dense earthy substance. The specific attribute of the earth substance is density and gravity, heaviness. You have filled your body with this heavy earth substance with the help of the total body breathing method. Again, begin with 7 inhalations, increase your inhalations by 1 breath with every exercise. You must be able, through concentration, to accumulate so much of this earth substance within your body that it feels as heavy as lead, and, because of this heaviness, you almost feel as if you are paralyzed. The method of exhaling this element is the same as with all the other elements. When you have completed this exercise you should feel as normal as when you began. The duration of this exercise should not exceed 20 minutes. In Tibet this sadhana exercise is among those most often practiced by the lamas, meditating over a lump of clay, taking it apart and then meditating over it again. The true magician understands how to control the earth element in a much simpler way by going directly to the root, and therefore does not have to resort to such difficult meditative procedures. The colors of the individual elements may assist you when you do your concentration exercises. Fire equals red, air equals blue, water equals greenish blue, earth yellow, gray, or black. Making use of the above colors during your exercises by applying the respective colors to their particular element is an individual choice. It is not absolutely necessary. Should the color imagination make it easier to practice the exercise, then make use of it in the beginning. Keep in mind that the main purpose of these exercises is strictly directed towards the sense of feeling. After having practiced these exercises for a longer period of time, every student must, when it comes to, for instance, the fire element, be able to produce such a degree of heat that when the temperature is measured with a thermometer it registers a fever. This preliminary exercise for the control of the elements is absolutely necessary, and the greatest attention must be paid to it. The many different kinds of phenomena the initiate can produce when he has the ability to control the earth element, for instance, are numerous. It is at the individual's discretion to meditate about this himself. Control of the elements is the most obscure area in magic. Very little has been said so far about this subject because it contains the greatest arcanum. It is therefore at the same time the most important subject in the magic sciences. Whosoever does not possess the ability to control the elements will hardly be able to attain anything of importance in magical knowledge. Magical schooling of the physical body. By now the first step of this course of instruction must have already become a habit, and the student must continue to practice the first step for the remainder of this course. The third step is an extension of the second. The asana posture of sitting peacefully in absolute stillness is to be extended to 30 minutes. In step 3, the pore breathing of the entire body will be very specialized and directed towards specific individual organs. The student must possess the ability to have any part of his body breathe through the pores by itself, at his discretion. Begin with the feet and end with the head. Let us begin the practice. Sit in the usual asana posture and close your eyes. Transpose yourself with your consciousness into one of your legs. It does not matter if you begin with your right or left leg. Imagine that your leg, just like the lungs, inhales and exhales vital energy from the universe in unison with your lung breathing. To clarify this point, the vital energy is inhaled, absorbed, from the whole universe, and through exhalation it is exhaled, discharged, again and returned into the whole universe. Should you have accomplished this after 7 breaths, then do the same with the other leg. The next step is to breathe simultaneously through both legs. Should you be successful, continue with the hands, first one hand and then the other. Following that, have both hands breathe at the same time. Should you achieve the desired results, then continue with the organs that follow, such as the genitals, large and small intestines, stomach, liver, spleen, lungs, heart, larynx, and head. These exercises are complete when you are able to have every organ in your body breathe, even the smallest. This exercise is very important because it will give you the ability to control every part and every organ in your body, to charge it with vital energy, stimulate it and restore it to health. If we are able to accomplish this with our own body, we should be able to accomplish this without difficulty in another body through the transposition of our consciousness. This is very important when magnetic energies are transferred in the art of magical healing. Therefore pay great attention to these exercises. Another exercise of the magical physical body schooling is the accumulation of vital energy. We have learned to inhale and exhale vital energy from the universe through pore breathing with the whole body. Now we will begin with the accumulation of vital energy. The practice of accumulation of vital energy: assume the usual asana posture, seated on a chair, inhaling vital energy from the universe into your body through the lungs and through the pores of your whole body. In this instance, do not exhale the vital energy back into the universe, instead, retain it in your body. This is accomplished by thinking of nothing while you exhale the used up air in a normal manner. With every new breath you take, you must feel an increase in vital energy and the accumulation of vital energy in your body. And you must feel within yourself the pressure of this vital energy as if it were compressed steam. Imagine that this compressed vital energy radiates from your body to the outside, similar to a heating element or radiator. With every breath you take, the force of the pressure or the force of this emanation increases, yard by yard, farther and farther, becoming stronger and more penetrating. Through practice and by repeating these exercises, you will eventually be able to emit your penetrating vital energy emanation for miles. You must be able to literally feel this pressure, this penetrating force of your emanation. Practice makes perfect. Begin this exercise with 7 inhalations and increase by 1 inhalation every day. At any given time, this exercise should not exceed 20 minutes. In practice, this exercise is only to be applied when it comes to tasks and experiments. We require a great expenditure of penetrating vital energy for the treatment of ailing human beings, telepathy, magnetizing of objects, etc. Should you no longer be in need of this vital energy in such an accumulated form, then the body must be released from this tension and return to its normal state. It is not advisable to remain in this overwrought state in everyday life. It would have an adverse effect on your nervous system, and it would lead to nervousness and fatigue and cause many other harmful consequences. This exercise is brought to its conclusion by exhaling the accumulated energy and returning it to the universe through the imagination. Consequently, you inhale only pure air and you exhale the tension of the vital energy until you have the feeling that you have reached an equilibrium. After an extended period of time, the magician will be able to release the vital energy to the universe all at once in an explosive manner, like the bursting of a fully inflated tire. This form of discharge should only be practiced after you have become proficient in the aforementioned method and when the body has reached a certain level of resiliency. Once you have attained a certain level of proficiency in this method, or in other words once you have mastered the sudden discharge, then you can begin to practice the same experiment with individual body parts, slowly, and step by step. In particular, specialize on your hands. Initiates also specialize on their eyes and are therefore able to control and captivate not only one person through their will but quite a number, at times even entire crowds. A magician who has the ability to load his hands in this manner has blessed hands. Within this lies the mystery of blessing, the laying on of hands for people who are afflicted with ailments, and so on. The exercises of the third step are complete when you have attained the ability of accumulating vital energy not only in your whole body but also in every single part of your body, and you must also be able to project this accumulated energy to the outside. The magical schooling of the physical body of the third step is concluded with the mastery of these exercises. 7. E. The vital energy produces a certain amount of positive tension, which has to be exhaled. Ed. Addendum to Step 3. By the time the conscientiously practicing student has reached this level in his magical development, he will notice that a general transformation of his character has already taken place. His magical abilities will increase in all spheres. In the mental sphere, the student will have attained a stronger will, a greater resistance, a better memory, a keener power of observation as well as a clearer intellect. In the astral sphere, the student will notice that he has become calmer and more well-balanced, his latent abilities will start to unfold in accordance with his disposition. In the material or physical world, the student will observe that he has become healthier, more vigorous, and rejuvenated. His vital energies far exceed the vital energies of many of his fellow men, and in his everyday life the student will achieve much through his emanating energy. For instance, through this emanating energy, or radiant power, he can clear any room he is in from any unfavorable or unwanted influences and load the room with his vital energy. He also has the ability, even from a distance, to help the sick and ailing successfully, since he can project his emanating energy for miles. With this same energy he can load objects with his wishes. These are just a few examples. The student will find out on his own how, where, and when he can employ his magical abilities most favorably. The student should always remember that these magical abilities can be used for good, but also for selfish purposes. Therefore always pay heed to this very important proverb, whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. His goal should always be directed towards the very best. Working with magnetism offers all kinds of possible variations, so that the student gains a better overview. We will mention a few possibilities. 1. Room impregnation. By breathing through the lungs and pores of your body, you inhale vital energy. With the power of your imagination, press this vital energy into your whole body to the point that it radiates dynamically. At this point your body should be like a luminous power, a focal point or burning point. You could easily make the statement that it is an individual sun. With every inhalation, increase the compressed vital energy as well as the luminous power and fill the room with it. With the help of the emanating energy, radiant power, the room should literally be as light as if the sun were shining. It is possible through repeated and continued exercises to illuminate a dark room or a room at night to such a degree that the objects in the room can be seen well, not only by the practicing student but also by the uninitiated, because the light of the vital energy can be materialized by this method into actual daylight, which in reality is only the practice of the power of the imagination. The magician will not be satisfied with these phenomena alone, for he knows very well that the vital energy possesses a universal character. Not only is the vital energy a carrier of his ideas, thoughts, and wishes, but also the manifester of his imagination. He can attain everything through this vital energy. However, to realize this is a matter for the plastic imagination. When the student is filling his room with his emanating energy, he must also imagine what he is trying to accomplish. For instance, that the room will be cleared of all astral and magical influences, or that these will vanish, or that not only will the magician feel healthy and well in that room, but so will anyone else who enters or remains there. Furthermore, the magician can impregnate his room with the wish for proper inspiration, success, and so forth in all his undertakings. Magicians that are further advanced have the ability to protect their room, and the moment unwelcome guests enter it they become restless and do not want to remain. Such a room is impregnated with the notion of protection and fear. You can also impregnate a room in a more stable manner. In other words, if any person enters the room without permission, such a person will be thrown back with a paralyzing effect. As you can surmise, the magician has limitless possibilities at his disposal, and on the basis of these instructions he can conceive many other methods. When exhaling, the magician can return the accumulated vital energy to the universe and retain the emanating energy or the luminous power in the room with the help of his imagination. He also has another possibility. Through his imagination he can project the vital energy directly from the universe into the room without first accumulating the vital energy in his body, especially when he has reached a certain level of proficiency in the accumulation of vital energy in the body. He can impregnate the room in this manner even with his own wishes. There are no set limits when the imagination joins forces with willpower and belief, coupled with a firm conviction. When the magician performs this type of work he is not limited to a designated room, but can impregnate 2 or more rooms or even an entire house with his life energy and emanating energy, either through himself or directly from the universe in accordance with the methods described. Since the power of the imagination knows neither time nor space, this work can be accomplished even from the greatest distance. In time, and with the aid of this technique, the magician will be able to charge any room, small or large, far or near. In respect to his ethical development, he will only entertain good and noble things, and through this his might will be limitless. Practice makes perfect. 2. Biomagnetism. In this chapter we will learn about another specific attribute of vital energy. This attribute is of the greatest importance for our magical work. We already know that any object, any animal, any human being, any thought form can be charged with vital energy and with the appropriate wish for its realization. The vital energy possesses the attribute of being able to accept, be influenced by, or connect with any thoughts, even thoughts and feelings that are foreign. For this reason, the concentrated vital energy will soon merge with other thoughts and will therefore weaken the effectiveness of the impregnated thought. The thought could even vanish, unless the magician calls forth, through frequent repetition, an increased tension. By doing so he stimulates the wish or the idea, which often causes a great loss of time and at times also influences the success adversely. The desired influence is only effective as long as the tension prevails in its desired direction. Once that is no longer the case, the vital energy fades or vanishes and mingles with the other vibrations and the effect gradually subsides. In order to prevent this from occurring, the magician must become acquainted with the law of biomagnetism. Vital energy not only accommodates one idea, one concept, one thought or one feeling, but also accepts a concept of time. This law or this specific attribute of vital energy must always be taken into consideration when working with vital energy or later on when working with the elements. Each time you work with the impregnation of a wish with the help of the vital energy, you must always consider both time and space. When working magically, you must always adhere to the following rules. 1. Working in the Akasha principle is spaceless and timeless. 2. In the mental sphere you work with time. 3. In the astral sphere you work with space, form and color. 4. In the material or physical world you work with time and space simultaneously. With the help of some examples I will make working with biomagnetism understandable. With the help of vital energy, charge or load a room with the wish that you will feel healthy and well in that room. You limit, or, better, confine the energy with the wish that the influence will remain constant for as long as you are in the room and live in it. When you leave the room or perhaps are absent for longer periods of time, the influence constantly renews itself and then stabilizes itself. Should someone enter your room without being aware that an accumulation of vital energy is prevalent, such a person will also feel quite comfortable in your room. At times you can reinforce the density and the strength of the radiance in your room, apartment, or house by repeating your wish. When you live in a room or house which is influenced in this manner, the vital energy which is thus confined will have a continuous good influence upon your health, upon your body. The vital energy in this particular room has the wish vibration for health only. However, should you practice exercises in this room which pursue another idea vibration and which have nothing whatsoever to do with health, then you will not achieve the good results you would achieve in a room that is not charged at all or in a room charged with a wish in accordance with your idea. It is therefore advisable to impregnate a room with idea vibrations which you require for your present exercises and tasks. You can also charge a ring, a gemstone, etc., with a wish, and whosoever wears it will meet with success and good fortune. There are two methods of charging and determining a time limit. The first method is as follows: with the power of imagination and wish concentration, charge the gemstone or the metal with vital energy and determine the time. You may choose that the energy should remain in the object permanently and even draw more energy from the universe and continuously increase its power and bring success and good fortune as long as the person wears the object, whether it be a ring with a gemstone, etc. Or you can charge the particular object for just a short period of time. For example, you can charge it in such a manner that the influence ceases immediately when the desired purpose has been fulfilled. The second method is called universal loading or charging. The procedure is the same, you only change the wish concentration to last as long as the object, ring, gemstone, jewelry, exists. Regardless of who the wearer is or will be, it will bring him constant good fortune, success, etc. Universal loadings of this kind, if performed by an initiate, retain the energy with complete effectiveness for centuries. We know from the history of the Egyptian mummies how these types of energies or powers may still be effective even after thousands of years. Should a talisman or object which was charged for a particular person come into the possession of another person, it will have no effect upon him. However, should the original owner regain his property, then the talisman will automatically continue to be effective. There is also another area where vital energy can be employed, in the healing arts, called healing magnetism. Whenever a magician treats an ailing person, whether it be in person by magnetic strokes or the laying on of hands, or at a distance through the imagination and the will, the magician must always consider the law of time if he wants to achieve great success. The most commonly used magnetizing method is the one wherein the magnetopath, with the help of the imagination, has his vital energy flow out of his body into the ailing person, mostly through his hands. This method requires a magnetopath who is completely healthy and who has an abundant supply of vital energy, so as not to endanger his own health. I have seen sad cases in which the magnetopath, by relinquishing too much of his own vital energy, incurred so much harm to his health that he was close to a nervous breakdown, besides all the other side effects such as heart ailments, heart asthma, and so on. Consequences of this nature are inevitable when the magnetopath expends more vital energy than he is capable of replenishing, especially if he has many patients in the same time span. This method also has another disadvantage: the magnetopath transfers his own astral or psychic vibrations and character traits to the patient with his energy and, through this, indirectly affects and influences the patient astrally. There are books available on the subject of magnetism. That is why it is a prerequisite and a requirement that every magnetopath must be of a good and noble character. On the other hand, when the magnetopath is dealing with a patient whose character traits are worse than his own, then the magnetopath indirectly attracts these bad influences from the patient upon himself, which is in every respect a disadvantage for the magnetopath. A hermetically trained magnetopath does not expend his own vital energy upon the patient. Instead, he draws the vital energy out of the universe and allows it to flow directly through his hands into the ailing person with the wish concentration of health. Both these methods require frequent repetitions of the magnetizing if the patient is to achieve a rapid recovery, because the disharmony or ailment or the seat of the ailment absorbs and consumes the transferred energy quickly and craves more energy. That is why the treatment has to be repeated soon if you wish to prevent the condition from worsening. It is entirely different when the magician is the magnetopath. The patient will not feel any relief until the magician has opened himself astrally or psychically, namely when he has dynamically performed an accumulation of vital energy in his body and then emanated these light rays of vital energy into the ailing person. The magician can successfully employ many methods, but he always has to maintain the imagination with the concept of the wish that the patient will improve hour by hour and day by day. I will mention a few methods which the magician may employ in the treatment of ailments. Above all, the magician must be well versed in recognizing ailments and their symptoms. This knowledge can be obtained by a thorough study of the respective literature. It is of course self-evident that a good knowledge of human anatomy is a must. The magician will certainly not be so negligent as to treat ailments that require immediate surgical intervention, nor should infectious diseases be solely under the magician's care. But quite apart from the medical treatment, he has the ability in the above-mentioned instances to accelerate the healing process and to alleviate the pain. He can achieve this even from afar. It would also be a welcome addition if medical practitioners would specialize in this field and, in addition to the allopathic art, would understand how to employ the magical practice. That is why a magician should only deal with those patients that are directly referred to him by a medical doctor for this kind of treatment, or else work together with a medical doctor, in order to avoid being accused of quackery or charlatanism. Above all, a magician should have only one goal in mind: the welfare or well-being of the ailing person. He should not work in return for monetary rewards or any other selfish gratification, such as praise and acknowledgement. He should think only about the high ideal of kindness, hence the blessing will be inevitable. The idealistic magician helps those who suffer without their knowledge. This kind of help is the most blissful. I will cite a few of the most commonly used methods of which the magician may make use without running the risk of endangering his health and nerve energy. Before approaching the bed of an ailing person, inhale at least 7 times through your lungs and pores, accumulate an enormous amount of vital energy from the universe into your body, and let this vital energy shine like a sun in its brightest light. Endeavor through repeated inhalations of vital energy to call forth an emanating energy in a circumference of at least 10 to 12 yards of your body, which incidentally is equivalent to the vital energy of 10 human beings. You must have the feeling that the accumulated vital energy shines like a sun in your body. If you are in the vicinity of a patient when you embody that radiance, he will momentarily experience relief, a pleasant feeling will take hold of him, and should the ailment not to be too painful, he will immediately feel better. It is your privilege to transfer the accumulated luminous energy in a very individual manner to the patient. A schooled magician does not need to make use of magic strokes, nor does he have to do any laying on of hands. All these methods are only auxiliary manipulations and at the same time support an expression of his will. It would be completely adequate if the magician were to take one or both hands of the patient and work with his imagination. He can have his eyes closed or open, he can look at the patient if he so wishes, but he does not have to. Here he works merely with the imagination. The magician can also sit next to the patient during the entire energy transfer without coming into physical contact with him. Imagine that the emanating energy that surrounds you flows into the body of the ailing person and is being pressed into his body by your imagination and penetrates and illumines all his pores. While you are doing this, you order with your will that the compressed luminous energy bring about the recuperation of the ailing person. While you are doing this, you must constantly imagine that the ailing person improves hour by hour, that he looks healthier every day. You have to order the luminous energy not to leave the patient's body until his health is completely restored. When you charge the body of the patient quantitatively with the luminous energy, then in accordance with the ailment you will be able to bring about a surprisingly quick recovery. A healthy person's radiance range is about 1.09 yards. After a while, repeat this loading procedure, but you have to reinforce the tension of the luminous energy which you accumulated by concentration. The success you achieve will surprise you. First, the luminous energy cannot escape, because you have contained it and ordered it to constantly renew itself. Secondly, you have determined a time frame in which the body will become healthier hour by hour and day by day. Thirdly, you have determined the space which the energy is to occupy in accordance with the circumference of the body. It would also be advisable for the emanating energy to be contained to approximately 1.09 yards surrounding the body, which is equivalent to the emanation of an average person. With this method you will have fulfilled the fundamental condition of the material or physical law of time and space. When employing this method, the magician will notice that his own luminous energy, which he has transferred to the patient, does not diminish but continues to be as intensely luminous as it was at the beginning. This is due to the fact that the compressed vital energy in the body automatically renews itself, as with intercommunicating vessels, and thereby replenishes the consumed emanating energy immediately. Therefore, a magician has the ability to treat hundreds of ailing people without endangering his nerve energy, his spiritual or mental energies. There is yet another method that the magician can employ which allows him to treat the whole body or just an ailing part of the body. This is accomplished by pressing the vital energy directly through the pores with the imagination so that the vital energy continually renews itself from the universe until the recovery is completed. Even here you should not neglect the wish imagination of a limitation of time and space in which a recuperation is to be fully achieved. The above method can only be employed with patients whose nerve energy is not completely exhausted, in order that they may be able to endure a certain amount of pressure due to the accumulating vital energy. In the case of an experienced magician, the accumulated vital energy is already a materialized energy, that means a condensed physical energy, which can be compared to electricity. In comparison to other methods, this is the most popular, because it is very simple and extremely effective. Another very peculiar method is that, with the help of the imagination, the magician allows the patient to inhale his own emanating luminous energy. Should the patient have the ability to concentrate, he can do this on his own, otherwise the magician has to perform the imagination for the patient. In practice this is done in the following manner: the magician's luminous energy emanates up to a range of approximately 10.93 yards. Since the magician is in the patient's close proximity, the patient literally floats in the light of the magician's luminous energy, which is impregnated with the wish of complete recuperation. It is of the utmost importance that an ailing person who has the ability to concentrate be completely convinced that, with every breath, he inhales the luminous energy of the magician and becomes well. He must think very intensely that the healing energy remains within him, and that he progressively gets better even when the magician is no longer in his vicinity. Should the ailing person not be able to concentrate, or should the magician be dealing with ailing children, then he himself must imagine that the ailing person is inhaling the magician's emanating vital energy with every breath and directing it to the blood and thus affecting the recovery. Here, too, the magician must gather the wish concentration that the inhaled energy keeps on working positively in the patient's body. This is vital energy breathing conducted from the body of the magician through another person's body. Here we can refer to a quote from the Bible as proof of the statements made so far in this book. When Christ was touched by an ailing woman in the hope of getting well, he felt the loss of his vital energy immediately and made the following remark to the disciples that accompanied him: "I was touched." Always remember that time and space must be considered whenever you work with vital energy and magnetism. With this in mind, I have mentioned several examples in regards to the treatment of ailments, and could mention many more methods in regards to the treatment of diseases from the point of view of magnetism, or in which magnetism could be successfully employed. For example, the magician can make contact with the patient's spirit while the patient is asleep and effect many different methods of treatment. Besides treating ailing people magically with vital energy, the magician has the option to make use of the elements, magnetism, and electricity. Detailed descriptions of all methods and possibilities of treatment would fill a very voluminous book. Perhaps I will have an opportunity in the future to publish a book about occult healing methods from the magical point of view and make it available to those magicians who are interested in this subject. However, for the time being I leave this to the future. In this work I can only allude to a few methods of treatment in regards to the concept of time and space, in other words, magnetism. High initiates and saints, whose imaginations are developed to such a degree that anything they imagine immediately becomes a reality in all spheres, do not require any of these methods. They only have to express a wish or their will and it immediately becomes a reality. Every single magician should strive to reach this high level of spiritual development. Summary of the exercises in Step 3I Magical Schooling of the Spirit. 1. Thought concentration with 2 or 3 senses simultaneously. 2. Thought concentration on objects, regions, and places. 3. Thought concentration on animals and human beings. 2. Magical schooling of the soul. 1. Element breathing, inhaling the elements into the whole body. A. Fire equals warmth. B. Air equals lightness. C. Water _ cold. D. Earth gravity, heaviness. 3. Magical schooling of the physical body. 1. Retaining the exercises of Step I, to which you must become accustomed. 2. Accumulation of vital energy. A. Lung and pore breathing in the whole body, and B. Lung and pore breathing in the individual parts of the body. Addendum to Step 3. 1. Impregnation of a room. 2. Biomagnetism. End of Step 3. Introduction. Before I begin describing the more difficult exercises, I should also like to point out again that the student should take the appropriate amount of time and not hasten his development if he wishes to achieve absolute success on the magical path. It is therefore absolutely necessary to completely master all of the previous exercises before continuing with those which follow. Step V. Magical Schooling of the Spirit. This is the part of the book wherein I describe the transference of consciousness outward. We must understand how to transfer our consciousness into any object, any animal, and any human being at our discretion. Let us now begin with the exercise. First, place in front of you some objects which you make use of every day. Do this in the same manner as in Step 2, when you practiced the concentration exercises on objects. Then take up your usual asana posture and concentrate for a short while on one of the objects and memorize its form, color, and size. Now imagine that you have become this particular object. You must, so to speak, feel and perceive like that particular object and assume all its attributes. You must feel how confined you are to the area in which you were placed and which you can only leave through an outside influence. You also have to imagine the purpose of the object into which you have transformed yourself by means of your imagination. By intensive concentration you should also be able to observe your surroundings from the point of view of the object and assess its proportion and relationship to other objects. If, For instance, the object is located on a table, then you should feel the relationship to the table, as well as to all the other objects on the table, inclusive of the room in which they are all located. Should you successfully complete this exercise with one object, then continue practicing it with the others. This exercise is complete when you have been successful in connecting your consciousness with every chosen object to the degree that you have taken on the form, size, and attribute of the object, and when you are capable of remaining in the object without interruption for at least 5 minutes. During this exercise, the physical body must be completely overlooked and forgotten. Then continue and choose larger objects for your concentrative transference of consciousness, such as flowers, plants, shrubs, trees, etc. The consciousness knows neither time nor space, and it is therefore an akasha principle. Do not be discouraged by initial failure due to the unusual nature of the exercises. The virtues which will assure you the desired success are patience, perseverance, and tenacity. At a later date the student will become fully aware of the future significance of these preparatory exercises as far as magic is concerned. Once the student masters the transference of his consciousness into inanimate objects, then the next obvious step is to transfer your consciousness into living beings. I mentioned earlier that the consciousness is timeless and spaceless, therefore we do not need to have the selected object before us physically when we do our exercises with living beings. At this point the student must have attained the ability to imagine any being at his discretion. Begin this exercise by transferring your consciousness into the imagined form of a cat, dog, horse, goat, etc. The kind of trial object is not of importance, it could also be an ant, a bird, or an elephant. First, imagine the animals motionless and later on in motion, walking, running, creeping, flying, or swimming in accordance with that particular animal's abilities. The student has to be able to transform his consciousness into any form he wishes and also function therein. The exercise is complete when the student can remain in this position without interruption for at least 5 minutes. Initiates who practice this exercise for many years are able to understand any animal and can control them with their will. In this connection the legend of the werewolf comes to mind, along with various other stories where sorcerers turn themselves into animals. For the magician, these legends and fairy tales have a much deeper meaning and are of far greater significance than they are for the average man. These stories, without a doubt, describe so-called black magicians who do not want to be recognized when they do their unholy, wicked deeds, and thus take on these animal forms in the invisible world. The good magician condemns such actions, and his spiritual abilities allow him to recognize such beings and also identify the true form of the contriver. These preliminary exercises do not serve to seduce the student into performing contemptuous acts. Rather, they prepare him for higher magic wherein, for certain undertakings, he must assume higher divine forms into which he will transfer his self-consciousness. Once you are able, through this exercise, to assume any animal form with your consciousness and maintain this imagination for 5 minutes without interruption, then practice the same exercise with human beings. Initially choose acquaintances, friends, family members, relatives, people you have no difficulty in imagining. Gender and age are of no consequence. You must always be able to transfer your consciousness into the other person's body to such a degree that you perceive yourself to be and think like the person you envision. The next part of this exercise is to progress from people that are well known to you to total strangers, people you have never seen, and since you have never seen these people, you have to imagine them. Eventually choose people of other races and color as your experimental objects. The exercise is complete when you are able to transfer your consciousness for at least 5 minutes into a body that you have visualized. However, the longer you are able to maintain your consciousness in this imaginary body, the greater will be the advantage. Through this exercise the magician attains the power to bond with any human being. He will know the feelings and thoughts that arise in the consciousness of the person he has envisioned and will know his past and present, how he acts. The magician can even influence that person as he pleases. It is, however, advisable to keep this proverb in mind. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. A magician will never employ his influence for an evil deed or coerce another human being to act against his own will. If the great power over every human being which is given to the magician through this exercise is used by him only for the good of mankind, blessings will come his way. This will give the magician the understanding of why, in the Orient, the student holds his master in the highest esteem. By holding his master in the highest esteem, the student bonds himself instinctively with the master's consciousness. In this manner he will be indirectly influenced, which results in a faster and safer progress. That is why Oriental teaching methods consider a master, guru, absolutely necessary for the development of the student. What is known in Tibet as the anchor is based upon the same principle, but in reverse order. The master bonds with the consciousness of his student and transfers power and enlightenment to him. The mystics employ the same method, the so 9 called pneuma transfer. Step V. Magical schooling of the soul. In this chapter we will continue to extend our work with the elements. Thus far we have learned to accommodate one element within us through lung and pore breathing and to perceive its specific attribute in our entire body. Now we will learn how to load individual parts of the body with the appropriate element. There are 2 methods that can be employed, however, the magician must master both. Method 1 as described in step 3, inhale a particular element through the lungs and pores into your entire body and accumulate it, then exhale without or pure divine love. Ed. Pneuma in Greek means spirit or breath, among other things. Ed. Imagining anything. When inhaling, accompany the imaginary feeling with the specific attribute of the element. When the element is fire, the specific attribute will be heat. When it is water, you imagine coldness. When it is air, the imaginary feeling is that of lightness, and when it is earth, it will be heaviness, gravity. Begin with 7 inhalations, but instead of returning the accumulated element back to the universe and dissolving it there imaginatively, direct the element to a particular part of the body by compressing its specific attribute even more and filling the particular body part with it. You must feel the compressed element with its specific attribute much more intensely in the individual body part than you do in the entire body. Just as steam is compressed in order to produce more pressure, that is how the flesh, bones and skin of the individual body part must be permeated by the element. Once you strongly feel the specific attribute of the element in the part of the body that was loaded with it, then dissolve it throughout the entire body with the help of your imagination and discharge it through exhalation back into the universe, as described in step 3. This exercise has to be practiced alternately with every element and with every internal and external organ. There is, however, a very important exception to remember: do not practice this with the heart or the brain. If you do not wish to suffer great harm, do not accumulate any element in the heart or in the brain, whether for yourself or someone else. Only a master magician who is completely experienced in the control of the elements, one who is master over the elements, can tolerate a certain amount of accumulation in the heart and brain without suffering any harm, because a master knows his own body and has control over it. You can, however, supply any organ, even the heart and brain, with the specific attributes of the elements, but do not accumulate them. A beginner should refrain from accumulating elements or vital energy in the heart or brain, especially if he is not clairvoyant and does not possess the ability to observe the functions of the individual organs. When you accumulate the elements or vital energy in your whole body, then the brain and the heart become accustomed to this accumulation in general, because the force of this tension is not directed to one particular organ, but is more evenly distributed over the entire body. Special attention should be given to the hands and feet. You should learn to master the accumulation of the elements and vital energy in your hands and feet, because it is used there frequently in the practical part of magic. Very special attention is to be paid to the fingers. There is another possibility of discharging an element from an organ or body part. Instead of returning the accumulated element first into your body in order to release it from there, through pore breathing, into the universe, you can discharge the entire element from the particular body part directly into the universe with help of the imagination. The latter procedure is considerably faster. A magician has to be competent in both methods and understand how to make use of them at his discretion. Method 2. The second method of elemental accumulation into a body part is accomplished by transferring yourself with your consciousness into a particular part of the body, allowing it to inhale and exhale in the same manner as pore breathing. You inhale the element with every breath you take, yet you exhale normally, in other words, you retain the element you have inhaled. When you have the feeling that you have a sufficient amount of the particular element accumulated in the chosen part of the body, then you release the element through exhaling, in other words, you restore it to the universe from whence you originally inhaled it. This procedure is of course fast and simple, but it requires a certain competency in transferring your consciousness. You must also be competent in accumulating vital energy in any part of the body you determine. Once you master this practice perfectly, you can continue with the next exercise. We know that the human body is divided into 4 main regions in accordance with the elements. We will restate them for reasons of better understanding. 1. Earth element, from the feet to the thighs, the coccyx inclusive of the reproductive organs or genitals. 2. Water element, the abdominal area with all its internal organs such as the intestines, spleen, gallbladder, liver, and stomach up to the diaphragm or midriff. 3. Air element, chest, lungs, the heart, and up to the neck. 4. Fire element, the head with all its organs. The purpose of the next exercise is to load the individual regions of the body with the appropriate element. This is done in the following manner: take up your favorite asana posture. Through lung and pore breathing, inhale the earth element with its specific attribute of heaviness, gravity, into the earth region of the body, namely from the feet to the reproductive organs, genitals, and the coccyx. Inhale the earth element 7 times. Exhale nothing or normally, so that the earth region of your body is filled with the element that influences it. Retain the earth element in the earth region and continue by inhaling the water element 7 times into the water region, the abdominal area, without exhaling the water element, so that the water region is also filled with its element. Then continue on in the same manner with the next element. Inhale the air element 7 times and fill the area of the chest and retain it in its region without exhaling it. Then continue with the region of the head, fill it by inhaling the fire element 7 times. Do not exhale the fire element when you exhale, so that the region of the head remains filled with the fire element. When all regions of the body are loaded with the appropriate elements, you must remain in this position for approximately 2 to 5 minutes, then begin with the dissolution of the elements. Begin where you left off. In this instance we begin with the head, with the fire element. Inhale normally 7 times, but each and every time you exhale, which is 7 times altogether, you exhale the fire element back into the universe. When the area of the head has been cleared of the fire element, continue to clear the air region, then the water region and finally the earth region until the entire body has been completely cleared of the accumulated elements. Once you have reached a certain proficiency in these exercises, you can extend them by not only filling the individual body regions with the appropriate elements but also by compressing the respective elements in these regions. The procedure is the same as the one just described, beginning with the earth element and concluding with the fire element. The process of dissolution is the same as the one just described. These exercises are also of great importance, because they bring the material or physical body as well as the psychic or astral body into harmony with the universal laws of the elements. Should the magician for one reason or another experience any disharmony, all he has to do is practice the above exercise and he will immediately re-establish the harmony. Not only for hours, but for days he will experience the pleasant influence of complete universal harmony which creates and then sustains within him a feeling of peace and bliss. The harmony of the elements in the body offers a few other possibilities. 1. Above all, the student is protected from all destructive influences from the negative side of the elements. 2. When the student has attained magical equilibrium, he will find himself in the center of occurrences, he sees all laws, all coming into being and passing away in the universal, True perspective. 3. The student is not affected by many ailments and calls forth an equilibrating effect upon his own karma and therefore on his destiny. He becomes increasingly resistant towards unfavorable influences. 4. He cleanses his mental and astral aura and strengthens his mental and astral matrices. 5. He awakens his magical abilities, his intuition assumes a universal character. 6. His astral senses are refined. 7. His intellectual abilities are elevated. Magical schooling of the physical body. The exercises of the first step should by now have become part of your life, a daily habit. The exercises of the second step should be in accordance with time available and, if the possibility exists, reinforced and deepened. By now, you have to have the ability to adhere in the minutest detail to any asceticism to which you subject yourself, without succumbing to temptations or even struggling with them. The exercises of the third step should also be improved upon and deepened to the fullest. The position of body and limbs must be mastered to such a degree that you are able to remain in the asana posture for hours without experiencing the slightest disturbance, nervousness, tension, or cramping, or spasms of the muscles. The emanating energy must be increased, deepened, and must become more expansive, that is more dynamic. This is achieved through the imagination, the power of the imagination and more profound meditation. The magician must learn how to practically employ the emanating energy to any circumstance and situation. He must reach the point that every wish into which he transfers his emanating energy immediately becomes a reality. This will enable him to help suffering mankind in cases of sickness or accidents, and on this account he will be blessed. We will now deal with a subject that is not too well known, namely body postures, gestures and finger positions, which are commonly known as rituals. The fundamental principle of rituals consists of confirming an idea or train of thought through an external form of expression, or, the other way around, to call forth, or, as expressed in Hermetic terms, to evoke an idea or a train of thought through a gesture or an action. This fundamental principle applies to all ritual magic. This confirms that not only can any idea and any being be expressed through an external action, but these can also be bound to a particular task. Whatsoever does not receive or bear its particular name, its symbol, or external sign, is meaningless or of no significance. All magical procedures and rituals are based on this primordial thesis, and from time immemorial every religious system has had its own particular acts of worship. There is, however, a difference as to the significance of these rituals. Very little was ever disclosed to the general public, but was mostly kept in the strictest of secrecy and reserved solely for high priests and initiates. Every ritual serves a special purpose, regardless of whether it is the spell sorcery of Tibet, the finger positions performed by priests in Bali or during acts of worship in the Orient, or the ritual evocations of magicians. The synthesis always remains one and the same. When giving evidence or testifying in judicial procedures, raising your right hand and extending 3 fingers as a confirmation of truthfulness can also be considered a magical gesture. From the Christian point of view, 3 raised fingers symbolize the Trinity. Each of the numerous lodges and sects has its own rituals. The Freemasons, for example, are bound to a specific sign, word, and grip. Many things could be said about this subject from the historical point of view, but such a study would be completely meaningless for the practice of magic or for education in magic. The true magician is not influenced when he reads in various books of how some other magician draws his magic circle and considers it to be the symbol of infinity, divinity, and untouchableness, or how he transfers his genies and angels into the circle for his protection, or how a lama draws his mandala and, during his rituals, considers his Tathagatos as the symbol of a guardian deity. A magician does not require instructions that are foreign to him. He is well aware that these are only focal points for ideas and memory aids for the spirit. In step 4, the magician will learn how to devise his own rituals, acts of worship, gestures, and finger positions. Of course, everything depends upon his individuality and gift of perception. Many magicians accomplish considerably more with the most primitive rituals than does the philosophical speculator with complicated acts of worship. There are no specific guidelines. The student must act intuitively and must understand how to express any idea, any train of thought, as well as what he wants to have realized, in the form of a suitable gesture, finger position, or through a ritual. For example, he would certainly not express a blessing gesture symbolically with a clenched fist. In accordance with the circumstances or the situation in which he finds himself, he will devise an individual, unpretentious ritual which he will employ in complete secrecy without being observed by anyone. There are magicians who practice ritual magic by employing finger movements with their hands in their pockets, even when in the company of many people, without anyone being aware of it. This is accomplished by using the elements in accordance with the analogy of the 5 fingers: index finger fire, thumb water, middle finger akasha, ring finger earth, little finger air, right hand positive elements, left hand negative elements. May this example suffice. Learn to assign completely individual signs appropriate to the different ideas. Keep these signs a secret, because if someone else were to employ the same sign for the same idea, he would weaken the idea, the effectiveness of the wish, by draining your energy. Whenever you want your personal wish promptly realized, bind it to your own little ritual or gesture. The best is a finger gesture. Imagine that through this gesture your wish becomes a reality, or rather, has already become a reality. The law that the wording of the idea or wish has to be in the present tense as well as in the form of an order applies here too. The imagination that it becomes a reality in connection with the gesture or ritual must in the beginning be executed intensively with a feeling of certainty, as a foregone conclusion, with confidence and an unshakable belief in success. In the beginning, both the ritual as well as the imagination are to be employed. Later, when you are completely engrossed with the imagination of the wish and its realization, you will automatically, without noticing or being aware of it, feel compelled to make use of the gesture or ritual. When you have reached the point that a wish has become automatized in the imagination, then the procedure is again reversed. You execute the gesture or ritual and the imagination or the particular energy automatically releases the effect. This is the actual purpose of the ritual or gesture, finger position, or body posture. Once the ritual with the imagination is automatized, it is sufficient just to execute the ritual in order to achieve the desired effect or influence. A charged battery offers the best comparison. All that is required is the proper contact in order to have the necessary electricity available. Frequent repetition of the imagination of the gesture or ritual which you have selected establishes a reservoir of energy in the causal sphere of the Akasha principle, which, in accordance with the wish or purpose, assumes the required vibration, electromagnetic fluid, color, sound and all the necessary analogies. The statement could rightfully be made that all these things are immediate blood particles of the entire makeup of this energy reservoir. When this reservoir is loaded through frequent repetition, the mere ritual then releases a part of the energy from the reservoir and causes the necessary effect. It is therefore of the utmost importance to speak to no one about it, otherwise someone else could withdraw this supply of energy with the same ritual and achieve the same effects without any effort. However, the originator would be completely responsible for all the consequences. There are lodges that have their novices practice rituals through which such an energy reservoir is automatically loaded. This gives the higher initiates an inexpensive supply for their own energy reservoir, and they can make use of it without any effort on their part. Should the student progress to the point that he himself can make use of the energy in the reservoir, then he is told to use that ritual as little as possible. This knowledge may give many of you the idea that certain political movements and parties perform magical procedures in the manner of their salutations or greeting gestures indirectly, while constantly adding vital energy, even though in small amounts, to the common reservoir through continuous repetition. Such a gesture was used by the National Socialist German Labour Party, NSDAP equals Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. The salutations were accompanied by the raising of the right hand, which was representative, so to speak, of a gesture of power. However, when such a common energy reservoir has become very powerful and is misused for greedy and despicable purposes, then this spiritually charged energy, due to its polarity, turns against its originators or founders. The result is decay and destruction, not to mention the execration under which a multitude of people were incarcerated, where some suffered and languished while others were innocently sentenced to death, and still others became victims on the battlefields, all of which invisibly produce an opposite polarity which contributes to the dissolution of this reservoir of energy. The same law applies to the same degree to all other acts of worship, rituals, and cult practices, regardless of whether they are performed by religions, sects, or lodges. The miraculous healings at places of pilgrimage or holy places are based on the same fundamental principle. The devout believer draws the spiritual energy from the Akasha principle through his firm belief and his unshakable faith in the sacred picture or statue, icon. This energy is accumulated by the worshippers and the miraculous effects are achieved in this manner. A magician who is properly instructed will always find the true explanation for these or similar phenomena on the basis of the universal laws. If he so wished, a magician could, on the basis of his knowledge of the laws of polarity, use the energy which has been accumulated in such a cult reservoir for his own purposes and thus achieve such miraculous healings and many other seemingly miraculous occurrences. However, an ethical magician of high standing would consider such an act as larceny and would therefore never lower himself to such a level, because he has many other possibilities at his disposal. These examples are given only for the reader's information. We will now continue with the subject at hand, the rituals. As mentioned before, any idea, any wish, and any imagination can become a reality through a ritual regardless of the plane in which you operate, whether it be the physical, astral, or spiritual. The time elapsed before it becomes a reality depends in the first instance upon spiritual maturity and secondly upon diligence in the utilization of the ritual. The magician should always select rituals he can make use of for the rest of his life, as such they should be rituals of a universal character. The fewer wishes he has, the sooner will he meet with success. If the rituals that have been selected do not give the desired effects at first, do not add any other rituals. In the beginning you should really be content with one ritual, but you should not exceed 3. Having reached this level of development, the magician will know his boundaries and his limits in regards to his capabilities of loading. Summary of the exercises in Step 4I Magical schooling of the spirit transference of consciousness to the outside, A. Into objects, B. Into animals, C. Into human beings. 2 Magical schooling of the soul, 1. Elemental accumulation, A. In the entire body, and, B. In the individual parts of the body with 2 methods. 2. Establishing the harmony of the elements in the appropriate regions of the body, A. Fire, head, B. Air, chest, C. Water, abdomen, D. Earth, coccyx, reproductive organs or genitals, feet. 3. Magical schooling of the physical body rituals and their practical applications, A. Gestures, B. Body postures, C. Finger positions. End of Step 4. Introduction. Archimedes once said, "Show me a point in the universe and I shall lift the world out of its hinges." Very few people really know the significance of this sentence. It contains a great occult secret, namely the secret of the 4th dimension. We all remember being taught in school that everything that has a form, a stone, a plant, an animal or human being, in other words anything that has a physical body also has length, width, and height. If we imagine a double intersection in the center of a form, for instance a sphere, then at the point where all these lines intersect we have the so-called lowest point or depth point or nadir. And this is the point which Archimedes had in mind, because it is the origin, the starting point and the point of departure, it is the nucleus of every form. Any form, when observed from this point, is proportionately objective, which means that the form happens to be in its true equilibrium. Within this lies the mystery of the 4th dimension, the concept of time and space, the concept of timelessness and spacelessness, and also the secret of space magic. It would be very advantageous for the student to meditate very thoroughly about the above subject, because it will disclose to him undreamed of depths, and a high degree of intuition will be his reward. The magical schooling of the spirit of the fifth step is dedicated to space magic. Step V. Magical schooling of the spirit. Through the previous exercises, the student acquired a certain ability in concentration and learned to transform his consciousness at his convenience or to adapt it to any form, enabling him to look farther and deeper. The information given in the fifth step instructs us how to transfer the 10. Sometimes translated as, show me a point upon which to stand, and I shall, etc. Ed. Consciousness into the central point of any form, from the tiniest atom to the highest universe. Through this the student will not only learn to understand, conceive, and grasp any form from its central point, he will also learn how to control it from the central point. The abilities acquired after completing the exercises that now follow will be of great importance for all future magical exercises, because only through these exercises can the mental or spiritual equilibrium be established in accordance with your wishes and at your own discretion. The spiritual or mental equilibrium is the specific fundamental attribute of the akasha or causal principle of the spirit. Let us therefore begin with the practice. Start the exercise in the now familiar asana posture. Place some larger objects in front of you, as for instance a ball, a cube, or dice, etc. In the beginning it is advisable to choose objects that are solid throughout. Observe one of these objects carefully for a short while. Then close your eyes and transfer your consciousness into the depth point, in other words into the exact center of the object. Imagine that you yourself are in the center of the object, you must also feel that you are there. The transference of your consciousness must be so intense that you are completely unaware of your physical body. This exercise is very difficult, but it will make you a master. Do not be discouraged by failure in the beginning, but continue to exercise diligently. Since we are only accustomed to 3 dimensions, we will initially encounter difficulties, but these will diminish from exercise to exercise. Gradually you will become accustomed to it and you will be able to concentrate yourself into the depth point of any object. When you have attained the proficiency to remain for at least 5 minutes in the center of your chosen object, then you are ready to continue with the next exercise. Should you have been successful so far, you may now select objects for your exercise which are not symmetrical. Every time you practice this exercise, you must be able to transfer your consciousness into the center, depth point, of any object you choose and have the feeling that you are no bigger than a poppy seed or even as small as an atom. Should you be able to succeed without interruption every time you do this exercise, continue with the next exercise by trying to ascertain from your depth point the size and form of the object. The smaller you imagine yourself to be and the more your consciousness shrinks, the larger must the circumference or the expanse of the object appear to you. For you, the chosen object must represent a whole universe. Maintain this feeling as long as you possibly can. Should you be successful in performing your exercises without interruption with both symmetrical and asymmetrical objects, then you can continue on with the next exercise. These exercises can be considered complete when you have achieved the same level of success with every object you have selected. After much practice with this exercise you will attain the ability to see through any object, and you will intuitively gain the knowledge of the material as well as the spiritual structure of any object. At the same time, you will also have attained the ability to influence any object from its depth point, in other words from the nucleus, and to load it magically at your convenience and in this manner impregnate the mental sphere of any object with your wish. In the 4th step we learn to master this through the accumulation of vital energy from the outside to the inside. This step gives us the maturity to accomplish the same, but in a much more intensive form and from the inside to the outside. A magician must be able to achieve the same with animals and human beings. He must also be able to accomplish this with objects that are not directly within his visual range. Our consciousness knows no limits, therefore the magician can transfer his consciousness over great distances. Once the student has reached this point in his development, he can continue with the next exercise, namely the transfer of his consciousness from his own body into the fourth dimension of his body, his little universe, the microcosm, the akasha principle of his own being. The practice is as follows: sit quietly in your usual asana posture and close your eyes. Transfer your consciousness to the center of your body, the solar plexus. You must have the feeling that you are a mere dot, an atom in the depth point or central point which is located between the frontal solar plexus and the outer spine. This central point is the depth point of your body. Try to remain in this point with your consciousness for at least 5 minutes, use a watch or any other timing device. Observe your body from this depth point. The smaller you imagine yourself to be, the larger and more voluminous will be your perception of the circumference of your body, which will appear to you as a large universe. While in this depth point, meditate and use these or similar words: I am the central point of my body, and I am the determining power therein. Do not be discouraged by initial difficulties. Should you be able to succeed for only a few seconds, continue the exercise, for out of seconds come minutes. The student must be able to remain in this depth point with his consciousness for at least 5 minutes. When the student has properly completed this step, he must be able to transfer himself at any minute and in any situation into this depth point, into the akasha principle, and from thence to recognize and affect everything that concerns his own being. The true magical state of trance is the transference of the consciousness into your own akasha principle, a preliminary step in connecting with the cosmic consciousness. The practice of connection with the cosmic consciousness will be described in another step. The magical state of trance is not to be confused with the condition that spiritualist mediums call forth. The question might arise: how often is one dealing with a genuine spiritualist medium? Mostly you are dealing with fraud or charlatans that mislead the gullible. Genuine spiritualist mediums reach the trance state through prayer, chanting or some kind of meditation, or conversely by passivity of the spirit, vacancy of mind, through which they invoke a spontaneous displacement of consciousness. When a human being is in such a state, it becomes possible for elementals, departed human beings and other lower entities to prevail upon the astral as well as the physical body and make proclamations and influence it to other actions. From the hermetic point of view, such experiments are considered a state of possession, even if at times you are dealing with good beings or entities. A genuine magician does not doubt that these experiments can be carried out in the case of real spiritualistic attempts. All he can do is pity such mediums or mediators. The magician has the ability to contact these entities in a different and conscious manner. The reader or student will find more details in a special chapter. Magical schooling of the soul. The practical instructions of the fourth step taught us how to draw the 4 elements from the universe into our body. First, we learn to accumulate the elements in the entire body and then in each of its individual parts in order to call forth a tension of the elements. This tension, which is produced by the accumulation of the elements, is also called a dynamite. From one exercise to the other, the body has become more and more resilient in respect of the tension caused by the accumulation of the elements and more resistant towards the pressure that has been produced. Now with this exercise we will take another step forward and be taught how to project and control the elements outwardly, because practical magical work is not possible without being able to do so. It is therefore of the utmost importance to master the practice completely. Sit down in your usual asana posture. With the aid of your imagination, inhale the fire element with its specific attribute of heat through the lungs and pores into your entire body, and then exhale normally. Once your body contains a considerable amount of heat and you have accumulated a sufficient amount of the fire element, release the element by means of the imagination through the solar plexus and fill the room you presently occupy with the fire element. When you are discharging the element from your body, you must have the feeling that the body is completely free of it, in other words that nothing remains and that the element you accumulated in your body has now spread throughout the room. This is similar to the exercise you practiced when you impregnate the room with vital energy. Repeat this exercise with the fire element several times by accumulating it and then discharging it into the room. Each time you discharge it, you accumulate more of the fire element in the room. As soon as you are free of the element, you must feel and perceive the accumulated element in the room on your own body and feel that the room has actually become warm. After you have reached a certain competence in the practice of this exercise, the heat in the room will not only be subjective, which means produced in the mind, but real. If a person enters such a room filled with the fire element, he will actually feel the heat, regardless of whether he is a magician or not. A thermometer will indicate to us the extent of our imagination in accumulating the fire element to the point that actual physical heat exists in the room and can be felt. The success of this exercise depends upon your will and how graphic the power of your imagination is. It is not a requirement of this step to produce physical heat that can be measured with a thermometer. Should the magician have a special interest in this kind of phenomena and wish to pursue this direction, he can specialize by following the above instructions and by solely practicing this particular element exercise. However, a true magician will not be content with such a minor phenomenon and will instead work on his further development, since he is completely convinced that he can achieve much more as time goes by. The room projection exercise of the element of fire outwardly is complete when the magician distinctly feels heat in the room. When the magician has accomplished this, he then releases the accumulated fire element into infinity again by dissolving it into the universe in spherical or globular form in all directions. Should the exercise room be charged with an element, the magician can leave the room at his own discretion without dissolving the element first. He can also confine the element to the room for any length of time at his discretion, similar to the impregnation of the room in a previous exercise. All success depends upon the will and imagination of the magician. It should be pointed out that it is not advisable to leave a room accumulated with a particular element for a long period of time, because the spirits or beings of that particular element will frolic with mischief in such an atmosphere, usually at the expense of the magician. There will be more details on that subject in a chapter dealing with working with spirits of the elements. It should also be mentioned that should the magician practice these exercises outside in nature, in an area not surrounded by walls or in an unlimited space, then he must create a room with the aid of the imagination. The size of the room is left to the discretion of the magician. The imagination knows no limits, regardless of where you employ it. The student will carry out the exercises with the other three elements in the same manner as with the fire element. The exercises following the fire element should be practiced with the air element, then the water element, and concluded with the earth element. How the student chooses to proceed with these exercises is left to his discretion because this depends largely upon time and the opportunities available to him. One day he can carry out the exercise with one element and the next day with another, or he can choose to accumulate the fire element in the morning, the air element at noon, the water element in the evening, and the earth element the next morning. Those students who have sufficient time at their disposal and who possess enough willpower can practice all four elements, one after the other. These students will make great strides in controlling the elements and can therefore progress rapidly. When the student can control all four elements in this manner, he can continue with the next exercise. The previous exercise taught the magician how to release the inhaled element through the solar plexus into a room. In the exercises that follow, the magician will learn how an element that he has accumulated through pore and lung breathing can be released into a room not only through the solar plexus but also by exhaling through all the pores of the body, thereby calling forth an accumulation of an element in that room. This has to be practiced with every element. The dissolution of the elements into infinity, into the universe, is accomplished in the same manner as described in the previous exercise. Once the student masters this exercise completely, he continues with the next exercise, which is the same in almost every respect, but with one exception: do not carry out the exercise with your entire body, but only with certain parts of it. In magic, the hands and fingers are mostly employed, therefore the student must pay the greatest attention to them. The student accumulates the particular element in one hand or in both hands by breathing through the pores, which enables him to release the element with lightning speed all at once with a mere motion of his hand into a room or space he has selected. In this manner he instantly impregnates the room with the particular element. By practicing this exercise repeatedly you will master it. The student must practice this exercise with all four elements and he must master the entire exercise. Once he has accomplished this, he can take another step on the ladder of his magical development. Sit down in your usual asana posture. Inhale the fire element through the lungs and the pores of your whole body, then accumulate the fire element in your whole body until you perceive the sensation of heat. Imagine that the accumulated fire element is forming a ball of fire in the solar plexus, which is being condensed to a diameter of approximately 4 to 8 inches. This condensed ball of fire must be so fiery and bright that it resembles the brilliance of the sun. Once that has been accomplished, imagine that this fireball is floating freely out of your solar plexus. It must be imagined to be white hot and emanating heat while it is floating in the room. Imagine this ball of fire for as long as you possibly can. When you stretch out your hands towards the ball of fire, you must perceive the heat it is emanating. Bring this exercise to its conclusion either by dissolving the ball of fire slowly into the universe or by suddenly having it explode into nothing. You must become proficient in both methods. Then continue on by following the same procedure with the elements of air, water, and finally earth. In order that you may better visualize the air element, give the ball a sky blue color while you are condensing it. The visualization of water should be easier than air. However, should you experience difficulties with the water element, imagine it to be a spherical lump of ice. It should certainly not be difficult to imagine the earth element as a ball of clay. Once you have carried out this exercise with all four elements in spherical form and have mastered them in this form, you may continue by employing the same method and forming other shapes with the four elements. In the beginning choose simple shapes such as cubes, cones, pyramids, etc. You can consider this exercise to be complete when you have succeeded in condensing all four elements into any shape you wish and projecting them to the outside. Never begin with the next exercise unless you completely master the present one. The next exercise describes the projection of the elements directly from the universe. The practice is as follows: sit down in your usual asana posture, and breathe calmly without effort. Imagine that you attract the fire element out of infinite space, out of the universe, and that you are filling the room you presently occupy with the element of fire. Imagine the universe to be an immensely large sphere from which you draw the fire element from all sides down into the room, filling it with the fire element. Imagine that the fire element is at its most etheric and subtle when coming from the primary source, and the more you draw it down to you, the more condensed, physically coarser and hotter it becomes. During this exercise you must experience the heat on your own body. The more the accumulated element becomes condensed in the room, the greater the heat. You must have the feeling of virtually being in a baking oven. Having done that, dissolve the element again into infinity through your willpower and imagination. Repeat the same procedure with the air element, which you also draw from all sides of the spherical universe down to you, filling the room with it and condensing it. While practicing this exercise you must have the feeling of floating in an infinite ocean of air, completely free of any attractive forces or gravity. If you have properly executed this exercise, you should feel as light as a balloon. Dissolve the condensed air element into its prime substance just as you did with the fire element, as explained in the previous exercise. Follow the same procedure with the water element. Imagine that you are drawing the water element down to you from an infinite ocean. In the beginning, imagine it in the form of a cold vapor which you constantly condense more and more as it comes closer to your person and the room. Fill the entire exercise room with this cold vapor and imagine yourself to be in the center of this imaginary water element. You must feel this icy coldness to the point that it causes goosebumps on your physical body. As soon as you experience this coldness, dissolve the water element back into its original form and back into infinity. This enables the magician to make his exercise room cool and comfortable within a few moments even on the hottest summer day. Follow the same procedure with the earth element. Draw from the universe a gray substance which is similar to clay. It becomes more and more brown the closer you draw it towards you. Fill the room very densely with this heavy substance. You must feel the gravity and its cohesive power as well as its pressure upon your own body. When you have attained control over this element through the sentience, then dissolve the earth element again into its prime substance as you did with the other elements. This procedure allows us to draw the elements down from the universe and materialize them wherever we concentrate them without having the element pass through the body. Everything occurs outside the body. The magician must completely master both methods. At this point in his development, when he performs a task such as healing ailments or creating servant spirits and elementaries, he must materialize the particular element through his own body. However, in other instances he requires the direct universally condensed element. Once he masters these exercises, the magician is qualified to continue with the next one. The next exercise deals with an element that is drawn out of the universe, but not in the manner described in the previous exercise, wherein you filled a room with an element. Instead, the element is condensed into a shape of your choosing. This is similar to those exercises where shapes were condensed in the body, solar plexus, from an element and were kept floating in the air outside the body. The difference here lies in the fact that the formation of these shapes does not take place in the body, but occurs by having the shape float immediately in the air. Therefore the magician must have the ability to create a fire sphere, an air sphere, a water sphere and an earth sphere. Once he has succeeded in producing these spheres perfectly, he should then form different shapes out of these elements which float in the room in front of him. After a certain length of time he should dissolve these spheres back into the universe. In each instance the magician must always distinctly feel the specific attribute of the element with which he is working. He must also reach such a level of proficiency that even the uninitiated or a person ignorant in matters of magic can perceive and see the particular element. These are already achievements on a very high level, results which are achieved through laborious work in this particular field of endeavor. The student must be able in the course of these exercises to condense each element from the universe and have the knowledge to compress it into any shape he wishes. That is the purpose of the above-mentioned exercise. Any magician who has been trained in this manner has the ability to condense an element to such a degree that it becomes a physical power or energy. Therefore you can set a fire ablaze even from the farthest distance with the fire element. In the beginning, practice compressing a fireball which has been drawn directly from the universe without having it pass through your body into a small bead with your imagination to the point that it becomes a glowing spark. Then direct this spark into a previously prepared cotton swab moistened with an easily ignitable substance such as ether, gasoline, or alcohol. Then prepare a second spark in the same manner with the air element, and when the second spark touches the first in the cotton swab should ignite and burn. Once the magician has been successful with this little experiment, he should make the attempt with the wick of a normal candle and then with a kerosene lamp. This has to be accomplished not only within the proximity of the magician but also from afar. Furthermore, you can banish a fire spark into a glass or a bottle and hurl a water spark like lightning into the glass or bottle. As soon as these two sparks make contact with each other, both elements will explode and the glass will burst into 1,000 fragments. Since the magician knows and masters these laws, he can invent these and similar little games, although the true magician should not waste too much time with such pastimes. He also knows that he can produce through the elements such natural phenomena as lightning, thunder, rain, and heavy thunderstorms. He also has the ability to disperse, stop, and dissolve them. All these powers appear to the average person as miraculous, but for the magician they are a matter of course and it is left to his discretion whether he plans to specialize only in such phenomena or whether he plans to continue with his magical development. Among other phenomena, he also knows how the Oriental fakirs actually produce the mango tree phenomenon, in which a mango tree grows from a seed and produces fruit within 1 hour. This feat is only possible by mastering or controlling the elements. The student has yet another possibility, to physically control the material condensation of an element by hurling the condensed form into a glass of pure or better yet, distilled water. This procedure should be repeated several times. The student will find the following results when examining the water. With the fire element, the water tastes sour; with the air element, the water tastes sweet; with the water element, the water tastes tart and astringent; and with the earth element, the water tastes stale or musty. When the above procedure has been employed, it can also be proven chemically by immersing a piece of litmus paper into the water that has been impregnated in this manner. If the water has been properly and thoroughly impregnated, you will find an acidic reaction on the litmus paper when it comes to the active elements, which are the fire and air elements, whereas the reaction to the water and earth elements is alkaline. Would this experiment not remind everyone of the wedding in Cana, when Christ turned water into wine? Only a high initiate such as Christ accomplished this miracle of transformation from within, through the mastery of the Akasha principle of the water and not through the influence of the elements from the outside.